In this video, we're going to talk about a very old technique for memorizing information. This technique actually dates back to ancient Greece. So it's a few thousand years old, but I want you to know this is very, very effective. And it's had a resurgence in popularity. When I first started teaching this technique, nobody really knew about it. When I would ask people, hey, have you ever learned this? Most people hadn't learned about it. It's only over the last few years that it's become more and more popular. And it goes by a couple names, but it's popularly known as the memory palace technique. It's also sometimes known as the method of loci. And loci is related to location. So this technique is all about leveraging your ability to remember locations, like your home or your office or your campus or your friend's place. You utilize a location to help you memorize information. So let's talk about how this works. The memory palace technique is very custom. You and I would have totally different memory palaces. But what you do is you got to create basically a walkthrough of your home. So think about all the locations in your home. And actually think about it from this standpoint. When you come home from work or from school, what is the first location you encounter? Is that the front door? If you live in an apartment building, it might be the lobby of the apartment building. If you drive to and from work or school, location number one might be the driveway of your home, or it could be the garage. So you choose your location one. But then the question is, what is location two? After you park your car in the garage, if that was your location one, what is the second location? So location number one for some people might be mailbox. Like for me, when I come home from work, the first thing I encounter before the front door is my mailbox. I'll just check to make sure I got the mail from there. Location number two for me is the front door. And then location number three might be the stairway. Location number four could be the living room. 5 is the hallway. 6 could be the kitchen, and so on and so forth. So you need to memorize that first. You never repeat a location. So you go through your entire home and you just create kind of an ordered walkthrough. So I think it's best to consider when you come back home, what are the locations that you encounter? All right, once you have that memorized, shouldn't be too hard because it's your home, you live there. So, I mean, it might take a quick little run through. You decide what those locations are, got it. Step 2, we need to memorize information. Well, what is that information? We're gonna jot it down. And you'll just do it. 1, I need to memorize this. Number 2, I gotta memorize that. Number 3, I need to memorize this, and so on and so forth. What do we do from there? We need to associate the information to the locations. So let me give you just a very basic example. Let's say the information you have to remember is something related to technology companies. And maybe we need to memorize these companies in a particular order. It could be based on market capitalization, the total revenue or profit of the firm. It could be based on what are the largest companies in terms of total employees. Let's say, this is just for example, these are not necessarily in a particular order for certain data. But let's say we had Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, Netflix. Let's say that's what we have. Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, Netflix. And there might be more. Well, let's just take the first 5. And let's say our first 5 locations are mailbox, front door, stairway, living room, and then maybe the hallway. Let's start with number 1, the mailbox. Well, if number 1 is Apple, we need to associate it to the mailbox. How exactly are we going to do that? Well, what are things that remind you of Apple visually? Might be iPhones. Could be MacBooks. When I say apple, you might think of actual apples, the fruit. For me, I think of Apple and I think of Steve Jobs. Now I gotta associate my information, my visual of Apple, to my mailbox. So what I would do, I don't know about you, we'd come up with different visuals obviously, but I would imagine myself coming home from work, I open up my mailbox, and the ghost of Steve Jobs just comes out of my mailbox. Sort of like a genie in a bottle kind of thing. I know this doesn't make any sense, but just, you would go with it. The whole point is to make the image weird so you can remember. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Steve Jobs grants me 3 wishes. Something strange like that. Now, Steve Jobs is enough to remind me that that association is with Apple from the mailbox, number 1. Now, let's say number 2 is Amazon. Well, the question is, what do you remember? When you think of Amazon, what's the first thing that pops into my mind? Well, it could be a package from Amazon, but we got to exaggerate. So this might be a giant package from Amazon, okay? If location number 2 is your front door, you might picture a giant package from Amazon on your front door. Now, when I think of Amazon, I think of Jeff Bezos, the leader of Amazon. And I would imagine Jeff Bezos standing at my front door, delivering me a box that I ordered from Amazon. And that would be a really weird image because I don't know Jeff Bezos. And why is he here? That's kind of cool. And I wouldn't be thinking of Jeff Bezos from like years ago. I'd be thinking of like the current Jeff Bezos, you know, someone that sells absolutely everything, not just books. We move on to number 3, and if number 3 was Facebook, if location number 3 is my stairway, I'm now imagining that I've opened the door to my home, and I gotta think of something Facebook related on my stairway. So that's the first thing I see when I go into my home, I see a stairway. Now, Facebook reminds me of Mark Zuckerberg, the leader of Facebook. I would think of Mark Zuckerberg sitting on my stairway. Maybe he's checking his Facebook, he sees me coming, he's like, oh, hi, Paul. And I would be outraged. I'd be like, Mark Zuckerberg, why have you violated my privacy yet again by invading my home? And we just think of something goofy like that to remember, oh yeah, 3 is my stairway. I remember seeing Mark Zuckerberg, getting really angry, that whole situation. And we just keep moving on. So if number 4 is Twitter, and you gotta associate that to the location for living room, well, Twitter reminds me of blue birds, sort of like their icon. So I picture a bunch of blue birds flying around my living room. If number 5 is Netflix and 5 is my hallway, I need an image for Netflix and I need something to connect to my hallway. And of course, exaggeration should be involved because that's how we remember things more effectively. Now, here's the interesting thing about the memory palace technique. You do not have just one location you're familiar with. You are familiar with many locations. And what you can do is actually use many locations to remember all sorts of things. So if you have to memorize something for school and you have, I don't know, maybe 5 classes and final exams are coming up, well, one memory palace might be for your history class. One memory palace might be for your class related to physics. Another memory palace might be related to the English literature class that you have to memorize things for. So you can utilize multiple memory palaces. And when I say that, I mean not just your home. What about the place where you work? What about your childhood home? What about your friend's place, your other friend's place, your aunt and uncle's place? What about your grandma's place? So there are a lot of locations that you're already familiar with. It's just a matter of you building out those memory palaces. And when I say building them out, I mean thinking about, okay, when I go to my childhood home, what's the first thing I think about? First location, second location, third location. Once you have that set, you can use that as sort of like a mental filing cabinet. And there's one other very useful way to utilize the memory palace. What if you have to remember detail? So for example, you have to remember maybe Facebook, and if that was on the 3rd location, your stairway, if you have to remember Facebook, but you have to remember 4 details about Facebook, well, you just need to put those in 4 places. Or if you're moving on to Twitter, number 4, and you have to remember 3 things about Twitter. If Twitter is in the living room, if it's location 4 is the living room and I have to remember Twitter, and I picture blue birds flying around my living room, but there might be 3 or 4 things I gotta remember related to Twitter. Think about your living room. We're just gonna use locations of your living room, or we're going to use objects in your living room. And you can do this very easily because, you know, your living room, maybe it has, you know, a large, like for me, I would use the large couch. If I had 3 things to memorize details about Twitter, I would use the large couch, I would use the coffee table, and the TV. What if I had to remember 4 things? All right, I'm gonna use the large couch, the coffee table, the TV, and then I'll use the small couch. What if I got 5 things to remember? Well, I'll just use another object, maybe the lamp, or the floor, or the ceiling. And you wanna go about it in a methodical way. So if you had to remember those details in a precise order, well, then you need to go around your living room in a precise order. I would do that based on a clockwise walk around. So if I was at the entry point of the living room, for me, from my perspective, it would be like this, going that way. And I just take objects. You know, there's a large couch, there's a little corner table, there's the lamp. To me, there's the fireplace, there's another lamp over there, and then there's the TV in the middle, there's the coffee table, and we just keep on going from there. And of course, everybody's would be different, but I'm just giving you an example so you know if you have to remember details, you could actually put them in various places in that particular location. So it's like locations and then sub-locations. And then you move on to the next thing. So the memory palace technique, if you start utilizing this, this will help you remember lots and lots of information. Not just the information and the topics, but details associated with it. So I hope you get a chance to try this out. It's a very, very powerful technique. It was used by the ancient Greeks. It's unfortunate that it isn't more commonly taught in schools. That's a subject for another conversation, but I hope you get a chance to utilize it.